Having me as a so-called useless daughter-in-law must be such a disappointment, or at least that's how she always made me feel. Her mocking laughter rang through the phone, sharp and unrelenting, leaving me stunned in the middle of the bustling service area. The arrogance in her voice, the disdain lacing each word, and her blatant disregard for my worth ignited a surge of anger that burned deep in my chest. She had always treated me like I was nothing, but this time her cruelty went too far. As I lowered the phone, her words continued to echo in my mind like poison. You, who just sit around the house, don't deserve to stay at a hotel. My chest tightened as if invisible hands were squeezing the air out of me. I blinked rapidly, trying to make sense of the moment. Just minutes ago, I had been traveling with my husband and his family, believing, naively, that I belonged. Now, I was standing alone on the cracked pavement of a roadside service area, abandoned as if I were disposable. The world around me seemed to blur. Families bustled in and out of convenience shops. Children clutched snacks and tugged at their parents' arms, and engines roared to life as cars pulled away. Meanwhile, I stood rooted to the spot, staring at the empty parking space where Tom's car should have been. Confusion and fear swept over me. I dialed Tom's number with trembling fingers, but he didn't answer. I tried again, nothing. Each failed attempt twisted the knife of betrayal deeper. Desperate, I called Elaine instead. When she picked up, her tongue dripped with disdain. "Oh, hello, Maya. Something wrong?" she asked, feigning innocence. "I'm still at the service area," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Did something happen? Did you leave without me?" Her silence lasted just long enough to sting before she answered, her words slicing into me. "Oh, we're already at the hotel. Trips like these are for family. You know, you're just an outsider tagging along." On her end of the line, I could hear relatives laughing in the background, their mockery amplifying my isolation. Their voices blended into one cruel chorus of derision. Her influence had turned the entire family against me. Even Tom, my own husband, hadn't lifted a finger to defend me. Anger and sadness churned violently inside me. The humiliation, the dismissal of my contributions, and now this outright betrayal. It was too much. For years, I had endured Elaine's snide remarks and condescension. Her sneering face and contemptuous eyes filled my memory, replaying every insult she had thrown my way. Her obsession with pushing me aside, treating me like a stain on the family, had suffocated me. And Tom, he had let her. Something inside me snapped. A decision crystallized with searing clarity. No more. I drew a deep breath, forcing down the trembling in my hands. My pulse pounded in my ears, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was the raw power of long-suppressed rage. My heart raced with a newfound determination, a defiance that had been buried under years of silence. Clutching my phone tightly, I dialed another number. This time, my voice came out calm, measured, and steady, though it burned with resolve. "Hello," I said. "I have a favor to ask." It was the beginning of reclaiming my life. It was also the first step toward an unexpected revenge. "My name is Maya Smith, and I am 40 years old. For the past decade, I have been more than just a wife. I have been a businesswoman, a manager, and the heir to a family legacy. But none of that mattered to Elaine. To her, I was nothing but a burden, a woman past her prime who couldn't even give her son children. I had met Tom in my late 30s. At first, he was charming, attentive, even thoughtful. After 6 months of dating, he proposed, and I accepted, believing I had found someone who valued me for who I was. But marriage revealed another side of him. The warmth in his eyes cooled into indifference. Conversations dwindled into empty exchanges. He became more absorbed in his own world, barely noticing me at all. Still, I convinced myself that this was marriage, that love eventually settled into routine. One evening, as I cleared dishes after dinner, Tom finally addressed me directly, startling me. "Hey, Maya, I need to talk to you." "Oh, what's up?" I asked, smiling slightly, grateful for the rare attention. "My family is planning a trip, about 20 relatives. They want me to handle the hotel reservations and the itinerary." "That sounds like a big task," I replied, pausing mid-wash. "Well, I'm busy with work. You've got more days off than I do, so you handle it. Find a cheap place since I'm paying for everything, and if you're coming along, You'd better pitch in too. His tone was dismissive, as if delegating chores rather than asking his wife for help. I wanted to point out that I worked just as hard as he did, managing not just my professional life but also the responsibilities of our home. But I swallowed my words. For once, he was actually including me in family plans, even if it was in the form of an order. Okay, I said after a pause. I'll handle everything. Thanks. Just don't embarrass us. Make sure it looks decent, he muttered, already scrolling through his phone, dismissing me with a flick of his attention. That night, after the dishes were done and Tom had drifted into his usual half-sleep on the couch, I slipped into the bedroom and made a call. My voice, though calm, carried a sharp edge of purpose. Hi, it's me. I need a favor. A few days later, Tom's parents arrived at our apartment. When I had shared the travel plans with Tom, he insisted we invite them over to go through the details in person. Elaine wasted no time asserting herself. As soon as she stepped inside, she made a beeline for my kitchen cabinets. Without hesitation, she began rummaging through them, pulling out jars and packets as though she were shopping at a grocery store. Maya, are you seriously eating gourmet instant curry from a hotel? How indulgent. You should be cooking proper meals for Tom instead of living off things like this, she remarked with mock disapproval. Without asking, she dropped several packets into her handbag. It wasn't the first time. Every visit, Elaine treated my home like her personal storehouse, helping herself to groceries, kitchenware, even decorative pieces. Once, she had taken an entire set of dishes, justifying it with her usual refrain. Anything in my son's house is fair game. What's wrong with me taking it? Tom never said a word. Rick, his father, merely laughed at her antics. I had learned to hide my favorite items before they came. Finally, when Elaine had finished shopping, she sat down. I seized the moment to present the trip details. Here's where we'll be staying, I said, showing them my phone with images of the luxury hotel I had booked. Elaine's eyes narrowed at the sleek photos of grand lobbies and spacious suites. Her lips curled into a mocking smirk. Well, aren't you aiming above your station? How exactly are you affording this? Fortunately, I managed to negotiate a group discount under Tom's name, I replied evenly, concealing the truth with practiced ease. Elaine leaned back, her tone dripping with false praise. I thought you were useless, but I suppose even you can manage something like this. Her words stung, but I forced myself to smile. What Elaine didn't know was that the hotel I had reserved wasn't just a random property. It was mine, part of the empire my family had painstakingly built. And soon, she would find out the truth. I set off in Tom's car, planning to meet the rest of the family at the hotel. The late afternoon sun filtered through the windshield, casting a golden glow across the dashboard. Elaine, seated in the back with her arms crossed like royalty in a carriage, couldn't resist her usual jabs. Tom, isn't it time you replace this old car? You shouldn't be driving around in something so shabby. What will people think when they see us pull up in this rust bucket? Tom's knuckles tightened around the steering wheel, but he kept his eyes fixed on the road. I'd love to, Mom, but right now, it's not in the budget. I glanced at him, sensing the weight in his words. This trip was already stretching him thin, 20 relatives to accommodate. All their expectations piled on his shoulders. I wanted to reach out, to remind him he wasn't alone. But before I could speak, Elaine gave one of her signature sighs, dramatic and dripping with disdain. Oh, please, I'll pay for it. I can't stand the thought of my son driving around in such a junker. It's embarrassing. Next week, we'll go to the dealership together and pick out something respectable. Tom's expression brightened immediately, the corners of his mouth lifting into a smile. Really? Thanks, Mom. Of course, she replied, leaning back smugly. You deserve better than this. Their conversation flowed on as if I weren't even there, like I was no more than a shadow sitting beside Tom. It had become the norm, me fading into the background while Elaine dictated the rhythm of our lives. But that didn't make it hurt any less. You know, Elaine mused, her voice sharp and deliberate. If only there were grandkids along for this trip. But I suppose it's too late to hope for that now. That's what happens when you marry a woman who's already past her prime. Her words landed like daggers. My chest tightened, but I forced myself to keep my gaze fixed on the road ahead. Tom shifted uncomfortably, his jaw tightening. But his response was barely a whisper. "Mom, Dad, can you not?" And that was it. No defense, no challenge, just silence that stretched uncomfortably until it smothered me. I turned toward the window, watching the landscape blur past. My throat felt tight, my stomach heavy with regret. Why had I agreed to this? To subject myself to another round of humiliation disguised as family time. Finally, I found the courage to speak, though my voice was soft. "Tom, I need to use the restroom. Can we stop at the next service area?" Elaine immediately rolled her eyes, muttering loud enough for everyone to hear. "Couldn't you have gone before we left? This is why we're always late." "I'm sorry, I'll be quick," I said quietly, though I knew no apology would ever be enough for her. Tom pulled into the next service area without a word. I hurried inside, my steps brisk with both urgency and the desire to escape. Even briefly, the line for the women's restroom was long, too long. I checked my watch, anxiety prickling at the edges of my patience. 10 minutes crawled by before I finally emerged. And then my heart sank. The parking space where Tom's car had been was empty. I froze, blinking rapidly, certain I had made a mistake. I scanned the rows of vehicles, my pulse quickening as the truth dawned on me. They were gone. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone. I dialed Tom first. No answer. Again. Still nothing. Panic clawed at me as I tried Elaine instead. "Oh, hello, Maya," she answered cheerfully, her voice like nails on glass. "Something wrong?" "I'm still at the service area," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "Did something happen?" "Oh, we're already at the hotel," she replied, her tone syrupy sweet, every word laced with malice. "Trips like these are for family. You know, you're just an outsider tagging along." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. "Elaine, you're already spoiled with what my son provides without really contributing. You can sit this one out," she sneered. Then came her laughter, mocking, cruel, and joined by others in the background. They were laughing at me. And then she hung up. I stood rooted to the spot, the phone still pressed against my ear. The world around me blurred as despair threatened to pull me under. I had worked tirelessly to organize this trip, putting aside my own work, juggling schedules, making every detail seamless. And this was my reward, abandonment and ridicule. But as the minutes ticked by, something hardened inside me. I wasn't just a discarded wife or a powerless daughter-in-law. I was Maya Smith, a woman who had built her life on resilience, on shouldering burdens others couldn't imagine. I had faced crises at work that would make Elaine crumble. No more. I drew a deep breath, steadying myself, and called the hotel directly. "Hello, this is Maya Smith. I have a reservation under the name Smith. Could you confirm it, please?" After ensuring everything was in order, I made another call, to my assistant at the main office. "Hi, it's Maya," I said, my voice clear and firm now. "I'm stranded at a service area and need a ride to the hotel." "Of course, Miss Smith. I'll send a car right away," she assured me. Relief washed over me. Soon, I would be back on track, not as their discarded baggage, but as the woman who held the strings they didn't even realize existed. Meanwhile, in Tom's car, Elaine leaned forward, her voice filled with triumph. "See, Tom? That woman was never a good fit for you. Too old, too barren, and frankly, not a catch." "Mom, enough," Tom muttered, though his protest was weak, hollow. Elaine's smirk grew. "I'm just saying, you deserve someone who's truly family material, someone who can give you what you need." Tom didn't reply. His silence spoke volumes, and for the first time, he looked as though he wasn't sure whether to agree or fight back. At the hotel, the family checked into their lavish suites, delighted by the opulence. They dined on gourmet meals, sipping wine, laughing as if nothing was amiss. Tom played his role, boasting just enough to appease them, though unease flickered across his face every so often. But their illusion was about to shatter. The next morning, when it came time to check out, they gathered in the lobby, expecting everything to have been taken care of. Instead, the manager approached Tom with a polite bow. "Excuse me, sir, here's your final bill." Tom frowned as he scanned the statement, his eyes widened, panic flashing across his face. "Wait, why is this so much more than expected?" We had a group discount. The manager's tone was courteous but unyielding. I apologize, but the discounted rate was contingent upon the owner's presence. The owner? Tom asked, bewildered. Who's that supposed to be? That would be Maya Smith, your wife. The lobby fell silent. Elaine clutched her purse as though it could shield her from the truth. Relatives murmured, shocked and uneasy. You mean, Maya owns this hotel? Tom stammered, his voice barely audible. The manager nodded. Yes, and since she wasn't here, the discount does not apply. The total amount due is $20,000. Elaine's gasp echoed through the space. This has to be a mistake. Tom, fix this. But Tom could only stare at the bill, his face pale, his pride unraveling. And that was when I arrived, calm, composed, head held high.